For the last 13 years out here at the cabin, whenever nature called, we'd have to wander out to the stinky old outhouse, often through deep snow and in temperatures well below zero. But as I get older and the family's gotten bigger, I decided it was time for something a little nicer. So today we're setting off to build a luxury outhouse, complete with a heater, cedar siding, and a ventilation system to keep it stink-free. So let's get to work. For starters, I wanted this outhouse to be a lot closer than the other one, so I picked a spot just off the porch and started clearing the land. There's a stump here. About right here. Make a good front. It's always a good idea to find any problem trees that you might want to take down before you start building. That way you don't have to do it after you already have a structure there. It took quite a bit of work with the pickaxe and shovels to break through the top layer of roots and duff, but once we were through that, the hole came along pretty easily.
Perfect, honestly.
Yep. Well, of course it starts raining. I'm using this plastic 55-gallon barrel to line the hole. The reason being is that it keeps the edges from collapsing on themselves. It also means that you can have it pumped. A lot of times if there's no liner in your outhouse hole, no companies will come and pump it out. Okay. I think that's going to do the trick. With the hole dug and the barrel in place, it was time to get to work building the foundation. It's a good spot, Norm. Really good spot. I'm doing just a really simple foundation with these pressure-treated beams and adjustable pier blocks. The adjustable blocks make it so that I can level things out if they get out of whack over the years, and putting it on skids means I'll be able to pick the whole thing up and move it if I ever get a new piece of property. Well, we're soaking wet, but I think we're finally just about done with our foundation. The next morning, I started cutting out 2x4s to frame out the floor. Alright, so I'm pre-drilling and screwing in all the corners. I've had too much bad luck with ends of these splitting when I shoot them with a nail gun. So anyway, we're just going to go ahead and screw in the ends. Like I said before, this is going to be a heated outhouse, which means it needs insulation. So before we put the decking on, I wanted to get this foam board secured in between the joists. So I'll show you guys a cool trick for cutting lengths of foam without it creating a ton of foam dust and particles. So you do it like that, so that the flat side does the cutting. So we're doubling up the rim plates around this backside because that's going to be the opening, which means that the plywood can't extend all the way over there. And so I wanted some more purchase for that plywood, so that's why I'm doubling up these rim joists around the edge. So I figured we'd do some plastic over the floor so any moisture coming up off the ground doesn't make its way into the outhouse. So we're going to screw this plywood down rather than nail it in, so that way it doesn't squeak over time or get loose. The screws and glue is really ideal, but we can't glue it because we put this plastic sheeting down, but it's no big deal. With the decking secured onto the floor, I decided to cut out the opening for the outhouse hole, which was a decision I would soon regret. Like, really regret. Okay, well, we've got ourselves a problem. I bought this little pre-made window, and the problem is that it's actually too wide to fit inside the framing if you add like basically a jack stud on either side. So we're actually gonna have to notch out the 2x4s on either side where this goes to give that ½ inch of clearance that this window needs to get in the wall.
Oh, there it is. Oh, here. There.
Okay, look at that.
Yeah.
And we did it. After getting the window in place, we were able to fire through the next couple walls without any trouble at all. Things were starting to take shape and move along pretty nicely, and that's when it happened.
Oh, I might have broke my knee.
And in fact, I did break my knee. In fact, I broke it in 3 places, tore my MCL, and damaged my ACL. I'm not sure yet because I'm just letting it sit still, but I think I messed my knee up there. Now, I didn't actually have the camera running when I fell in the hole, but I decided to do a little bit of dramatic editing so you guys got the effect. However, after my good buddy Steve pulled me out of the hole, he had the wherewithal to go over and turn on the camera for me, so that way I could relive those painful moments in full HD. And that's what friends are for. Alright guys, we're gonna get back to this. It's been 6 weeks since I injured my leg, and it's definitely still hurt, but I think it's time to get back to work because snow's in the forecast, and I don't have much time to get this outhouse done. So, despite my knee being sore and stiff, I think we're gonna give it a shot. Okay. Alright, so this is going to be kind of a weird wall I got to build. It's the front wall with the door, and the door is going to be up higher than the tops of the rest of the walls. So I've got to frame it like level with the tops of the walls, come in, and then up to do the door. Never built anything quite like this. Okay, 4 walls. To secure the walls to the floor, I used a couple of 3-inch deck screws in the corners, but remember it's the sheeting that really holds the walls down to the subfloor. Typically, you lock your walls together by overlapping your top plates. Well, in this case, I can't do that because my top plates extend out over the porch in order to hold up the roof framing, so I use these mending plates instead to achieve the same effect. I double-checked that the walls were plumb and then hammered them in. I called it an early night and spent the evening writing out some rough equations for my roof rafters, which I'd put up the following day. No sense in wasting daylight scratching your head. Alright, before we start building out the roof, we're going to go ahead and put the sheeting up for the side walls. And without an extra set of hands, I'm going to use some blocks up underneath this to set the plywood on to make sure it's flush with the bottom while I tack it in. Putting up the sheathing is what really locks your walls into place and adds stability, so I didn't want to start on my roof framing until this was done. Good boy. One of my favorite parts about making these videos is looking back at the footage and seeing the different creative ways that Norman decides to insert himself into the shots. It wouldn't be the same without him. So typically when I plan out my builds, I try to make sure that everything's going to be divisible by 8s and 4s, so that way you can use 8-foot by 4-foot pieces of plywood without any waste or unnecessary cutting. But for this little outhouse, I just wanted it to be exactly how I wanted it rather than how it should be for the plywood. All right, well, it's time to start figuring out our rafters. And this is a really tricky part of the build because it takes some math. There is different methods that you can use, like the step-off method that don't require math, but I've just had the best luck by figuring out mathematically what it should be. And then if it's not working that way, it's probably because your framing isn't straight or your ridge board isn't straight. So for this, I'm just gonna do something really simple. I'm gonna do 2x4s, 2 foot on center, and they're gonna be at a 12-12 pitch. But since I don't have to get up on this roof because it's so small, it'll be a good choice because it makes all the cuts really easy. Everything is 45 degrees, and you don't have to worry about too many crazy math equations. Norm's ready to do the roof. Huh, bud? Good boy. There's our first rafter. Hopefully it'll fit, and then we'll make this our template. And how about that? It actually fits. So now I'm gonna install the posts that are gonna support the ridge beams, so that way we can butt the rafters up to it. Look at that. All right, so our seat cut fits just right, and then it butts up against the post just perfectly. I couldn't be more happy with that. Yes! Yeah. The problem with these little rafters is that if I shoot it with a nail gun, it's just gonna split. So I'm gonna have to probably go in and pre-drill and screw every single seat, but that's okay. You wanna make sure to use the same template for all your boards. If you cut one and then use that as the template for the next one, they can slowly get off. So you just keep using the same one. All right, well, I've got the first few rafters up and in place just to make sure that they were fitting across the board, and they're looking pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut out the rest. All right, I got all the rafters cut out, and now it's time to install them. Before I could put up the rest of the rafters, I needed to install my ridge beam. Now, a ridge beam is different than a ridge board in that it's structural. It actually holds up weight, so that way you can have a cathedral ceiling without the walls bowing out. All right, I wanna show you guys something. Come on up here. That's what I call good enough for an outhouse. That's awesome to have the ridge level. That means that everything from the foundation to the floor to the walls to the framing for the roof is all working. That's the problem, is that if you start off with something that's a little unlevel or unplumb, it just magnifies with each step that goes up. So to get all the way to the top and have it in good shape is awesome. Figured out an easy way to do this is just come over to the wall studs and then pull my square up to it, and then I mark a line right here. Then I'm able to carry that line with the square. And there we go. Now for the ridge, grabbing it with my tape measure, bringing it over, and then I'll mark out that 48 on center. I have to admit I wasn't totally sure how I was going to get these big 10-foot pieces of plywood up on the roof by myself, but lucky for me, a friend stopped by to say hello, and like any good host, I immediately put him to work. I'm very thankful for all the folks who've lent me a hand over the years. Now, even though this is just a little outhouse, I certainly don't want any leaks coming through the roof, so I made sure to put down this felt paper before the sheet metal roofing. Okay. No! No! That's so frustrating. All the staples just fell out with this stupid plug. The reason that was so frustrating was because I'd had to piece together the right staples for this thing with a box of old screws and staples that I had laying around, so I had already wasted a bunch of time just piecing together that 10 or 12 staples that I had left. See that? Keeps trying to run away on me. It's got to be smarter than the tool. Okay. We'll save this piece for later. When you're installing metal roofing panels like this, it's absolutely essential to get the first one squared up really nice. Otherwise, all the other ones will start to drift off course. Shoot. Okay. After 3 days of doing the most strenuous activity my knee has seen in over 6 weeks, I have to admit it started to feel a lot better. Things just started to loosen up and I was even limping less. I decided to take advantage of the momentum and work into the night to get this sheeting done. Go. I think that's going to be good for tonight. All right. Another reason I was set on getting that sheathing done the night before was so that I could get started on the door construction first thing in the morning. Now, in my opinion, the door can be a pretty tricky part of the build. For this one, I just opted to use a flat piece of what's called project board for the main piece, and then I secured on these braces to make sure that it all held together, had some strength, and also didn't sag on the hinges. Now, obviously, this door wasn't going to need anything fancy like a doorknob or a deadbolt, so I didn't have to worry about the thickness. So just a quick note about Z-bracing. You always want to have the hinge side connect with the lower part of the Z, and this one away from the hinges. That way this comes out and is supported by this as it goes down. Otherwise your door can sag over time. So the hinges will go over there and the handle will go here. For setting the door, I use these 2 half-inch pieces of plywood. That way when I set the door down, anchored it in, and then removed them, I knew I'd have a half-inch clearance underneath. Okay, let's see how we did. Aha! Door! Now we just got to do the door stop on the inside and put a handle on it. I thought up an easy way to figure out the door stop on the inside. I just added these 2 boards to the outside of the door so that it would stop flush with the outside wall, held it tight from the inside, and then just pushed the pieces of door stop up against the door so I knew that it would fit snug when the door closed. It's just a chunk of birch wood. I think if I cut it here to there, could make a cool little handle. I think that handle came out pretty good. And with the door finished, it was time to move on to installing the window. The reason for the window is twofold. Obviously, some natural light is nice to have coming in, even though I'm going to have a lamp in there. And the other thing was that I wanted to be able to open a window in case it does get stinky or moisture builds up.
Shoot. Ran out of tape. Dang it.
I was feeling really good about my progress so far. I got the door and the window done like I wanted to, and still had plenty of daylight, so it was on to the porch.
I gotta leave a little bit of room to get my siding in here later on, so I'm gonna put these 1.5-inch blocks to space it out from the wall. I also don't want this snugged up against the building because when the snow falls, I want a little bit of a gap so that the water can drain out rather than get stuck in between and wick into the walls. There's a trick I picked up somewhere along the way. You just use a carpenter's pencil as your spacer. There we go. Okay, so I marked out a line at 11.5 up here and 11.5 up there, and I'm just going to mount like a ledger board for the framing to sit on. Okay, it's time to remove my safety plywood. This one here. Framing's all done. I just need some plywood to go across. The 41 by 13. So I pulled the foam off of my other seat because this blue foam is the stuff to use. Even if it's -20 outside, as soon as your cheeks touch this stuff, it doesn't feel cold at all. It's just super warm. Well, it's too dark to really see much, but there it is. Well, I feel pretty good about the progress I made today. And it's dark, so I'm gonna clean up and head inside and cook some dinner. Well, I was gonna insulate this with foam board just to keep it simple, but it was actually gonna be a lot more money to insulate it with foam board than it would be with fiberglass. I also thought about using rock wool insulation, but I could not find any rock wool that would fit into 2x4 studs. So I went with just regular batt insulation, fiberglass batt insulation, and it's the craft face stuff, so it'll be like a vapor barrier and the insulation. And it'll be fine for this outhouse. So really none of this stuff matters. All right, ready to rock and roll. Ready to go. All right.
I know it might seem a little over the top to be insulating an outhouse, but it can get down to -40 degrees here in the winter. And like I said earlier, my plan is to put a small electric heater in here that's hooked up to a switch in the cabin. So that way in the morning I can go over and hit the switch, let it heat up for 5 or 10 minutes, and get the temperature to something a little bit more bearable.
The 3 main walls are done. So now I'm going to do the roof with the cutoff pieces from the walls, and then I'll stuff some little pieces into the corners, and we'll be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and staple in those pieces of craft facing so that way they don't sag or fall down, and then I can finish up the last little bits. Whew. I hate insulation. Me and this staple hammer have beef, but I bought staples that actually fit it, and we're going to see if we can't get along today. Something important that I've learned the hard way is if you're ever installing insulation that has like a vapor barrier or something like this craft paper, you want to make sure that that stuff has plenty of slack in the corners so that when you come in with your siding, that you're not fighting the tension of this stuff. If it's pulled tight like this, they'll have this tension and you can't put your siding up against the studs to anchor it in. So make sure that you got lots of slack where the corners and the studs are.
Glad to have that job done. I never do any kind of exterior siding until after the insulation is finished. You wouldn't want to stick your hand on one of those nails that comes poking through the plywood. Well, as you can tell from my other structures on the property, I've done this style of siding quite a bit. It's called board and batten, and I'm using live edge spruce boards to make it happen. But the problem was that the only boards I had left were basically the scrap pieces and leftovers from previous builds.
Well, I have to admit, this is getting frustrating. These are not the right boards for this. They should be much smaller. I really wish I was working with like little 4 and 6 inch boards that can make this look really nice. I'm not really liking the way it's looking. And now I'm having trouble getting this to fit because this board I notched out and cut, but then there's only this skinny little strip to add something to. So I guess I'm going to have to rip this board in half. I don't know. Rip it in half, save room for another one, and then get a new cover piece there, I guess. I don't know. I've been working on this for like over an hour just on this front. It's getting silly. Really, really frustrating. And like I said, I'm just not really happy with the way that it's even looking, which is a huge bummer.
When I first started making YouTube videos, I tried to cut out all the mistakes that I made. I mean, no one wants to look like a hack on the internet for the world to see, but over the years I've intentionally tried to include all my frustrations, mishaps, and mistakes in order to give you guys a better idea of what an average Joe like me goes through when it comes to building something. Also, I think it's good for folks to learn from the mistakes that I do make, and again, it just makes it feel a little bit more human to me.
That was frustrating. Sometimes when you're building, you get into a rhythm and everything's going great and it's awesome, and other times it's just a struggle. And it takes you all day to do something that should have taken a couple hours at the most. I mean, it's 5 o'clock now, and I've wasted my entire day just goofing around with this front wall, and then it doesn't even look good. Anyway, that's the negative side of things. The positive side of things is that it's all done. It's going to be fine. So it's better to look on the bright side than to look on the negative side. So that's what we're gonna do. So moving on with life. All right, well, this is my first chance to see how my porch and roof is working out for the outhouse. Uh-oh, the door is shifted. All right, well, obviously I shouldn't have stapled in this piece of insulation. So what we wanna do is run a plumb string from where we want the pipe to exit from the top of the seat up through the roof, and then we'll mark that and then cut a hole through the roof. Okay, so the way I figured this would work is that the seat is kind of the highest point where all the moisture and bad smells are gonna rise up to. Instead of having it come out the lid when you open it, I'm gonna put a vent stack here. I found this toilet flange, I think it is, and then this is gonna mount to the top of the seat like this, and then I'm gonna run the pipe up through the ceiling, and then all that nasty air that comes up, instead of coming out the seat, in theory should go up this nice chimney stack, essentially. Just gonna use a chalk line as a plumb. I'd say right about there looks good. This ladder's not tall enough. That's why you have like 5 ladders. Ah! Snow down my shirt. That didn't feel good. gonna try something that I've never tried before. I'm actually gonna use a hole saw to cut this hole in the roof. I've got most of the hole cut. There's just this last little piece that I can kind of see. Fits in the hole, but you can see it's at an angle. I managed to bore out enough of the hole to get it to sit plumb. It's perfect right there. Plumb enough for a toilet vent. Yep. Well, to seal up the hole in the roof, we're going to use one of these roof boots. And I could not find one that was specifically designed for a pitched roof. They're supposed to be adjustable to the pitch because they're rubber, so they can just kind of bend. But I've never put one on a 12-12 roof, and so this is really steep, so it's going to have to bend a lot. I'm not sure if it's going to work, to be honest with you, but we're going to give it a try. So the first thing we got to do is cut it to the right opening for our pipe. Okay, now we'll see if this is going to work on that pitch. Don't think it is.
At first, it seemed like the roof boot wasn't going to cover the hole that I had cut, but then I had the thought to turn it diagonal, and sure enough, it actually fit just fine.
That might be good enough. Well, a thought just popped into my brain, which is admittedly sometimes rare, but I realized that once I anchor this down, I'm not going to be able to move the pipe at all, and tomorrow I'm going to be doing all the interior siding with cedar, and getting the cedar installed around the pipe might be a little trickier than if I could just move the pipe out of the way. So I think I'm just going to leave it like this. I don't think it's going to rain tonight, and I think I'm going to go inside and sit by the fire. I decided I am going to cut the pipe a little bit shorter. I'm worried that the warm air that comes up through this is going to condensate and cool as it hits the upper parts of this stack, which will cause it to just come back down. You can get a negative pressure from cold air sitting too heavy on top of warm air, and I'm worried that it won't pull the moisture and the stinky smells out. So I'm going to cut it just a little bit shorter so it doesn't quite have as far to go outside of the warmed outhouse. We're going to be using cedar tongue and groove so it'll smell good and look good and be resistant to moisture. I think we're just going to get started by measuring out some walls, making some cuts, start putting some boards in. So the tricky stuff begins. We've got to cut one that goes up and over this. That's 65 right there. Okay. I think it's too cold for my tool to work. That's weird. Battery's full. I'm gonna put this inside and get my jigsaw out. I'm not used to working with cedar. It's much softer than the pine that I'm used to. So I'm trying to be really careful to keep it looking nice. There we go. Yeah, looks pretty good. I always keep one of these flooring tools and a rubber mallet with me when I'm installing tongue and groove. It really makes life easier for getting everything locked together. You want to be sure not to hook this to the tongue of the board because it'll break. You hook it right in that seam below the tongue. Get a good hit on it. So that way if it does dent it up, it won't be showing. Alright, well I'm going to keep knocking these out. I'll check in with you guys in a bit. Alright, well I'm making decent progress. I got this entire left side done, including the ceiling. Then I just got the right side wall done, all the way up to the ceiling. But I realized that I need to put that insulation back. So I gotta cut a hole in the insulation, put it back in, put the pipe through, and then I can fit the cedar to it. Alright, so we got the pipe back in, so now we can cut our tongue and groove to fit. I'll just mark it at the pipe. Okay, so I'm going to use this cut off section of pipe, kind of about where the curve will go. Let's see how we did. Nice. That's a dang good fit. All right. See, and this is why I wanted the pipe out of the way to do this tongue and groove, because I can't get my nailer in there. Luckily for me, I should be able to just slide it up. There we go. I ran out of full-length pieces for this wall, so I'm having to piece together this wall with these scraps. And they're not lining up perfect because I think my saw isn't actually perfectly square. That's a bummer, but oh well. It's just an outhouse.
Now I realize that Norman doesn't exactly look like a traditional husky, but when he starts howling, he sure sounds like one.
Well, things have gotten frustrating again. As I got to the pitch part of the roof, just having a lot of trouble getting exact right cuts because the angles aren't exactly perfect because the way the tongue and groove meets the walls. All right, so I got the bottom of the back wall good. And then here's the parts that I decided to go vertical for. You can see there's a little gap there, but I'm gonna cover it up with trim. And just gotta get these last few finished. It's been really just weird cutting out and around these strange little spots, and it's hard to measure. I'm getting there. I'm determined to get it finished before I go to bed tonight. So we've got the main walls, the back wall, and the ceiling finished. All that's left to do along the edges of the door, and then this little nightmare up here. Hi, Norm. Oh. It's chilly. That cedar smells so good when you cut it. Good enough. Okay, we're all done. All right, well, I think it is time to install a heater in this thing.
because it's pretty chilly. But first I want to remind you guys that all the music in my videos is original, and it's written by me and my buddy Forrest out here at the cabin, and we recorded ourselves, and it's for sale on my website at alaskacabinadventures.com. I also want to say, for everyone that put money in the virtual tip jar and leaves me like a little note with it, I just want to let you guys know that I see all those and I read them all, and I'm just beyond grateful for you guys' generosity, your kind words, and your contributions to the channel, so thank you so much for that. So my plan for heating that outhouse is hooking up an electric heater to my exterior outlets on my cabin that I have wired into a switch on my breaker. So that way in the morning I can just hit that one breaker switch and it should turn on a light and a small electric heater in the outhouse. Maybe let it run for 15 minutes. My guess is that should be all it needs to get nice and toasty in there. Yes! Got it. Sweet. I'm going in. Ugh! It's dusty under there. Oh. Alright, well it ain't pretty, but it's gonna work. Alright, here we go. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, yeah! Oh, that's cool. That is cool. Alright, here we have our tiny little electric heater. Barely turning on. Ooh, it's cold. This heater might not be able to keep up with this kind of cold. Heat's coming out though. I bet it'll get going. Check this out. And I know you can't feel it over the camera, but it's warm in there. I'll show you. All right. Obviously I've got to do some electrical cord cleanup over here in the corner. Figure out a way to get that all tethered up and put away. But that heater is on. The light is on. Well, of course, as soon as I turned on the heater and got it running, my EcoFlow power station ran out of juice. So I'm gonna get the generator out and charge it back up. Let that get warmed up and then we'll plug it in. All right, well, I got the power station charged up, so we're gonna test out the heater in the outhouse. It's currently 5 degrees out there. And I'm gonna head over to the breaker, flip on the switch. Okay. All right, well, in about a 5-minute run time, I've got it up to 21 degrees Fahrenheit in there, which is -6 Celsius. So, huge improvement just in 5 minutes of running the heater. I'm gonna anchor in my tube to the seat. So now I gotta get back up on the roof and finish up sealing up the roof boot. And I'm using a particularly hardcore silicone caulking to seal around it, and it can be applied down to 0 degrees. Definitely pushing the limits, but hopefully it'll hold. This is so cool. It's actually like kind of warm in here. In an effort to make my door fit as good as possible, I didn't leave a lot of clearance between the edges. And over the last few months, either the door expanded or the framing around it contracted. Either way, it needed to be fixed. There we go. Door fits again. Now came the problem of figuring out how to attach the handle to the plywood, and then how to attach the plywood to the foam. I decided that I wanted to have screws going into the handle to make sure it was locked on there really good. Then for attaching the foam to the plywood, I figured construction adhesive would be the best way to go. If you try to sink screws through foam like this, they just rip out. I'm actually pretty pleased with how that turned out.
Alright, so even though it's not finished, this outhouse has been fantastic all winter long. The vent pipe keeps it from getting stinky in there, and the cedar siding actually smells pretty good. But one of the improvements I quickly realized I was going to need to make was adding what we call a pea shield. So in the front of the box there, I'm going to put a piece of metal so that just in case we get some runaway sprays, it doesn't hit up against the wood, eventually making it stinky. We're also going to put one in the back just to be safe. The only issue is that we have been using this outhouse all winter, so going down in there is going to be... Let's just be glad that you still can't smell anything over the internet. I have some thin galvanized metal that would work good for it too, but I figured I'd use my sheet metal because it's brown. Well, I need to measure how far down it is from the framing to the edge of the barrel. And there's no way I can think to do it other than sticking my head in the toilet hole. Yeah, 16 inches. 16 inches will be fine. All right. Whew. Well, hello. Looks like I can even maybe kind of curve it with the barrel and set it in these little lips here. That's pretty fancy. There we go. Okay. I got the piece in position. Now I just got to put a screw in it, and then I'm going to tuck it inside the edge of the barrel so that everything runs down into the barrel. And it'll also kind of curve around, so it's going to make almost a full circle in there. Well, I will spare you the visual, but just trust me, it looks really good. Next project. I think Norm has found a nice spot to enjoy the sunshine. Alright, well that looks pretty good. I think that'll be a sufficient shield. And the backside still isn't finished either, so I ran out of zip tape when I was doing this earlier. So I got some more zip tape, so we'll finish up this window and then see if we can't scrounge together enough pieces of leftover rough cut siding to give this backside a nice pretty finish. Okay, ready for siding. Alright, well I've got quite a few good pieces. I think we'll probably be able to make our siding for the back piecing all this together. Alright, well the roof pitch is a 12 by 12, which means it's a 45-degree angle, which conveniently, this side of the square is 45 degrees. Good enough for government work. Alright, first piece done. So now we just got to measure up to the window. 53.5. Nice job, bud. Whoa. All right, well, good enough. I'll never look at the back of this thing anyway. I still got to get this fascia board put on. And right now it's just what's called the sub fascia, which is just a 2x4 that sort of holds it all together. But I want to do live edge along here as well. So I need a nice big piece for this side and for the other side. Kind of disappointed because the one really nice piece of wood that I had left that I was saving for this exact purpose, hi Norman, excuse me sir, has started to discolor quite a bit with mildew, and it's probably mold. So I'm gonna go ahead and, whoop, Norm, get off of there buddy. You can use a wire brush on it and kind of get it off of there. You can try to sand it. But what I found works the best is just spraying it down with bleach. Not using the bleach to kill the mold, but to just remove the stains from the wood. Mold will die on its own once it's under cover and dried out with good airflow. I did a bleach and water mix in this bottle. It's not actually 409 in there, it's a mix that I just made. So I know the board still looks all discolored and ugly, but give it some time to let the bleach do its thing. Also, once it dries up and gets some wind on it, I'll come back and hit it again with some bleach and scrub it, and it'll actually shape up pretty nice. I've built quite a few things with wood that's in this bad a shape, and between the bleach and then air drying, it actually starts to look okay over time. Okay, looking pretty rustic now.
Now that the fascia board was done, I only had one more task to complete before I could finally call this outhouse finished.
Hey Norm. I just realized that's not the way to cut it. You cut it 45 here and then 90 from there. Okay. I think I figured out the issue is that my ridge cap is not allowing my gable drip edges to bend all the way down. The ridge cap is sort of like this, and they're wanting to go like this, and so it's holding it up. And it's because I put my ridge cap in before I put these pieces in. It's just sort of sucked down too tight to allow it to get all the way to the peak. Now I just got to cut off those long edges. I'm about ready to get my grinder and just cut this stupid thing. You know what, screw it, I'm getting the grinder. Well, the only grinder blade I have left was broken, but I do have my Sawzall. I don't really know what I'm doing, so I think I probably should have cut it all the way to here and then maybe folded it or something. I'm gonna have to deal with this sharp edge. I mean, it's plenty waterproof. Maybe I'll figure out some way to cover it. I don't know. I don't care. I think I'm just going to use this piece and cut it out like a triangle here and actually tuck it up into that void. Alright. Not very conventional, but I'm pretty pleased with that little bit of problem solving. Alright, well now I'm just going to do the same thing on the back, and I'll catch up with you guys when I'm done. I think this thing's pretty much done. Heater's running. It's amazing how warm it gets in here so quick with that little heater. I still need to get a little threshold for underneath the door. And I also want to put maybe like a little coat rack right here. I'll probably do the same thing I did for the toilet paper holder, just up there. And I don't know, maybe like a little mirror over here. There's always a bunch of little improvements here and there that I want to make. I mean, is a project ever really done?
Well, I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Life isn't about discovering who you are. It's about going out and inventing exactly who you want to become. So I hope this video inspires you to tackle your own projects, no matter how big or how small, because we really don't know what we're capable of unless we try. Well, don't forget to check out my website where you can download all the original music, you can donate to the virtual tip jar, and I even have some merchandise on there if you need a hat with Norman's face on it. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode of Alaska Cabin Adventures.